So astrology is like it's become popularized and it's become this sort of sometimes seemingly trivial or far out pseudoscience, pseudo psychological, like a fun party trick. But it's important to remember that when we talk about astrology, we talk about archetypes. So, for example, when you say someone is Aries, they have Aries sun or Aries ascendant, that means they're like Aries. But what is Aries? Aries is an archetype. No one person is 100% Aries. Aries itself cannot be completely manifested in a person. You can see glimpses of it. There's these 12 archetypes that we all have within us, and that we all have different ratios of these archetypes, but not one of us is a complete manifestation of an archetype. An archetype is in itself an interdimensional abstract concept or energy or frequency and therefore cannot be fully explained. So, another example, when we talk about yin and yang, yang is masculine, yang is male, yang is day. But so if you are male, you embody yang energy in that aspect. But daytime is also yang, and daytime doesn't have a gender. It's different. So yang as an archetype manifests itself as many different things, including dry, hot, masculine, sun. But these are all just different things that are connected by this abstract archetype. These archetypes are interdimensional knowledge. This It's literal knowledge which comes from higher dimensions, from Hermes Trismegistus, who was not a person. He lived for thousands of years. So how do you explain that? They were literal interdimensional beings which visited us, and do visit us still today. And one of them, Hermes Trismegistus, also known as Hermes, also known as Mercury, also known as Odin, also known as Thoth, also known as Quetzalcoatl. He had many different names around the world, but these gods give themselves different names, but they all they're they're these beings who could travel interdimensionally, and treated they had different ideas of how to treat humankind. And Thoth, Hermes, Mercury, Hermes Trismegistus, Odin, etc., he was one of the more benevolent uh, gods, so-called gods. He was one of the more benevolent of this race, who his idea was to enlighten humankind. He gave humankind language, and he's in the history books. But how people explain that he is this one character is at so many different times in history is I'm not sure how that's explained, but these beings travel interdimensionally and they gave us this knowledge. Um, Astrology isn't just this pseudo psychology that it's become. When you learn astrology, you learn about yourself from a different perspective. You learn about people. You learn about the world. You learn about nature. You see these archetypes everywhere, and it's sort of a relic, or it's testament to the fact that whoever or whatever created this world, created this reality, didn't they created it with patterns. So, like, you can see the Fibonacci spiral or sequence. There's patterns everywhere in reality that are in different parts of reality. And if there wasn't a some divine creator of some sort, then why are there these patterns all around us? What, why does female have anything to do with night, have anything to do with the moon? Why are these seemingly unconnected things actually connected by these archetypes? What is an archetype? What I'm getting at is you need to understand that we are not just physical. I shouldn't say need because it's an individual choice. You can choose to live solely in 3D reality. You can choose to be preoccupied by mundane reality, um, by your limited resources. You can choose to live in a reality that's just unpredictable and chaotic and doesn't make much sense, and there won't be a reason to why things happen to you. You'll go through life with an interesting experience, but you won't have really taken. The question is, how much are you going to take away from your life with that kind of outlook? And do your beliefs serve you? Do you believe that you are a creator in your life and in the world? Or do you believe that things only happen to you? Do you believe that there's something more behind physicality? Or do you believe that life is just confusing and it makes no sense? Do you believe that it's worth it to make what is unmeasurable measurable? Is it worth it to make sense of what currently does not make sense? Is it worth it to travel somewhere um, is it worth it to indulge in energies and thought patterns that don't make sense, but in doing so, in making them make sense, is it worth it to ground frequencies from other realities? Is it worth it to believe in other realities? Is it worth it to just believe that life is simple but unfulfilling? Or is it more worth it to observe and to see that maybe you don't know as much as you thought? That maybe you already know that there's more to the story. Astrology is a tool that can be used for many different things. Um, I strongly recommend astrology, or if not astrology, you need to understand that there's more than just mundane reality. You need to ground yourself, learn to manage 3D reality, but supplement it with the knowledge that nature is more complex and beautiful than we will ever understand. And that knowing that is the first step to increasing your awareness. It's sort of like the blue pill, red pill. And there's no judgment on what you take. And I say you need to do this, you need to do that. You really don't need to do anything. I just feel that life is worth so much more if you stop and look around and really notice things. So, archetypes. I've said before that my astrology is ruled by Mercury. Um, Moon in Gemini, ruled by Mercury, Ascendant in Gemini, Sun in Virgo, Sun Deacon ruled by Mercury. Um, there's so many other things and so many other um, signs that have shown me what I'm supposed to be doing here, which basically is in ancient texts, Mercury wasn't necessarily the planet of intelligence, it was the planet of translation. Mercury was the messenger god. Mercury is a small planet that orbits right by the sun. The sun was the source of knowledge. The sun is the ultimate source of the intelligence in the solar system, of much of it. It's the source of these signals and vibrations and energy. Mercury is there to translate. Mercury rules your speech. Every time you speak, you're translating. There are thoughts and feelings and what are essentially abstract archetypes that are inside of you that every time you go to speak, you are translating into words. So Mercury rules this 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 intermediary function between mundane reality and what is beyond mundane reality, or between mundane reality and the ethereal or the non-physical. So Mercury's job and my job, because like I said, you can't be 100% a manifestation of any archetype, but some people are some things more than others. For example, someone like, for me, it's interesting to find someone's chart who has sun, moon, rising all in fire signs, and they have a fire sign stelliums, and their whole chart is dominated by fire. They are not a literal manifestation of fire, but they are close to it. They'll People with charts that are particularly interesting like that. Every chart is interesting, but a chart that's dominated by one archetype will help you understand that archetype. So, for example, I'm not a literal manifestation of Mercury, but I'm close to it. I have a lot of Mercury energy, and I'm not bragging. It's Any trait is good and bad. It's not a judgment. It's not about whether it's good or bad. There are many strengths and challenges to that. I'm not any more special than anyone else. I think that we all have very interesting missions here if we would choose to see it. If we could, astrology is useful for that too. It's one of its many uses that you can understand what are you supposed to learn here? What has held you back from getting farther in life? How do you not only manage your basic needs, but how do you graduate that level of survival mode where you can go on to a more interesting mission where you're actually helping the world in some way or helping yourself in some way or just accomplishing something that's really interesting on a soul level rather than just trying to pay the bills or fight with your spouse or whatever? How do you graduate? Not graduate, but how do you learn to manage 3D reality in order to continue doing so, but to also incorporate more interesting themes? Um, so I'm digressing a lot, but Mercury is the translator. I am a pretty close representation of the archetype of Mercury. And so I'm realizing more and more that something that I've always had the inclination to do, but which has often been challenging for me, is to tap into the ethereal. My moon is in 12th house Gemini, so the place that I reside, or the place that I normally am, the place where my mind is, and the moon represents your thoughts, feelings, your inside, your core. All that for me is in 12th house Gemini, which is a very strange place. It's this cloudy, wispy place full of half-baked ideas, or ideas that are not ready to come into the world. And it's my Virgo sun's job and my Virgo Mercury's job to self-analyze and to observe externally as well as internally, and to use both the internal and the external to observe patterns which lead me to these almost like wispy energies or these clouds, these abstract uh, concepts, these patterns, these ultimately they're vibrations, they're frequencies, they're energies that I encounter in my mind, that I that I need to that I have to observe, analyze, and translate to make what is nonsensical sensical. How do I make how do I turn something which seems to have no shape and seems to have no um, groundedness at all? How do I ground that? How do I turn something seemingly ethereal and mystical or nonsensical, the shapeless wisp of nonsensical energy or information? How do I bring that into this world and make it applicable and usable? How do I make this information accessible? This is something that I'm working on. I'm approaching my Saturn return, and increasingly, after, during and after my Saturn return, um, this is increasingly my job to deliver this information, these archetypes. Astrology has been a very lucrative outlet to do this. And anybody could do this. Everyone has missions here. Um, my mission is to ground these frequencies. So, so when I talk about astrology, it's not just, it's actually important, and it could set you free from your mundane life. And if you don't like my astrology, if it doesn't interest you, find someone else's. And if astrology isn't your thing, find something where you can obtain this type of knowledge or awareness, or it doesn't have to be knowledge, it could just be a feeling that you attain. How do you attain temperance? Temperance is the secret of the universe. It's the final outcome. How do you achieve balance and wisdom? Or, first you need to graduate survival mode if you haven't done so already. Uncover those emotions that you didn't deal with. Deal with your emotions. Deal with your physical situation, your financial situation, your emotions, clean your house. Show the world that you can manage 3D reality and that you can manage more than that. Ask for a job. Ask for to know your purpose. Is your purpose just to run around trying to impress people or trying to pay the bills? Could it be something more than that? Do you have a say in it? These are things that I think we should all ask ourselves. And I'm not intending on pushing my objective onto you, because I believe that if you do look inside yourself and ask for more than just mundane life, you will find something that is maybe ultimately it'll be different than my path, because it'll be unique to you. We all have these completely rich soul lineages and these roles that we play. I'm just explaining mine the best way I can to show you that maybe you have a role to play too. We all have roles, but how much choice do you have in deciding yours? And are you happy with yours? Are you happy with the role that you've been playing? And is it the role that you'll always play, or is it going to be more interesting? So anyway, these are the things I've just been thinking about, and that I think everybody should think about more. But yeah, I should probably end this. It's getting long, but we'll see you guys later.